Okay, welcome back. We are this much closer on Schedule D. We're very much closer to finishing the final accounting part 2. Schedule D. And of course you need the same materials we used before. And we're going to focus in the Schedule D on what I've highlighted here, or I should say what I've placed in bold writing and underlined. Schedule D, in an estate, let me start with this. In an estate, they may, estates can be very large, or there are all kinds of reasons why there might be purchases and sales of assets. So that wouldn't be something that goes on a distribution list, correct? If we sell an asset to Sally Smith, and that means we don't have the asset any longer, we have converted it maybe to cash, then it would be something new. It wouldn't be the inventoried item that we had. We had a car for $16,000 and we sell it to Susie for $16,000. We bring cash in and we get rid of an asset that was listed in the inventory. And remember, the final accounting reflects everything that's left over and also reflects whether it's in the form of cash or property. If you reflect back on what happened in Schedule C when we listed the distributions, that might make a little more relevance to you. But it also helps us if we have an error on the inventory. Now, if we make an inventory and we say that an item is worth $10,000, but we find out at somewhere along the administration of the estate that it's only worth $9, and if the final accounting starts with the carrying values on the inventory, we have a problem. We have it's like your checking account. If you give the bank $10,000, you would think when you get your bank statement, if you haven't used any of the money, it would be worth have a balance of $10,000. So if the bank sends you a statement for $9,000, you're like, hey, wait a minute, what happened to my $1,000? Well, you might go to the bank and they might try to convince you that that $10,000 was really only worth $9,000, which doesn't make sense in that kind of example. But that's the idea. It's like a bank account. The inventory is just like setting up a new bank account, and everything in there should be the starting balance of your final inventory, of your final accounting, and you're adjusting for everything that happens along the way. In our case, we need to make an adjustment of a carrying value on the inventory of one of the assets. So let's look at the inventory real quick. If you'll notice, I've circled or highlighted, whatever you will, this deposit refund of $10,000. Well, this class wouldn't be any fun if I didn't make it interesting to you. So if I didn't at least show you some of the relevance to Schedule D, and to get your brains thinking when you're working in the real world. The Schedule D has to account for a problem that we learned about later on, and it's reflected on this spreadsheet. The checking account is here, and it shows refund on real estate in Bradenton, a deposit amount of $9,000. Well, my goodness, the inventory that we just looked at showed that it was worth $10,000. Well, that doesn't make sense. What can we do? Well, here's the reason why. If you look down here, I've highlighted some footnotes. The contract that Ms. Porter signed, where she was going to rent some property and she gave a deposit of $10,000. She gave this $10,000 deposit, but we learned later on, the personal representative of the estate and the attorney working for them learned later on, that wow, they being the people that Ms. Porter made the deal with, had a clause in the rental agreement, and $1,000 of that $10,000 was a penalty that the lessor got to keep for getting into the contract and for her having to renege from it. So even though she died, we don't have to carry on that lease. It's not a mandatory situation to carry on the lease. So here's the property here's the $9,000 they gave back, and they kept $1,000 because according to the contract they could do it. So we inventoried $10,000 value of that deposit, but they only got $9,000 back. And so we have to account, as it says right here, account for the $1,000 loss that the inventory showed we should have. Remember the checking account type of thing. The inventory represents what the assets were. If there are any changes, we're reflecting it all the way through the end of the account and through the final accounting. So it's really simple. And here is an explanation of what I just told you. The inventory counted the value of the deposits at 10, but it's only valued at 9, so we need to make a difference of this $1,000. So Schedule D is what we use to show this adjustment. Schedule D is used for other things, but we just want to deal with one in this case. Other cases that you work on will have other needs for Schedule D, but not this case. So it's really simple. On Schedule D, you complete the dates just like we always have done, same consistent approach. And remember, you don't use distributions here. Remember to keep make sure you're using capital. It's for capital transactions and adjustments. And this is a capital adjustment. We have to adjust the value. We put a date in there. Maybe it would be the date that we received the refund back of $9,000. And here we remember that it has, if you add a date instead of using the X's, which I'll accept, you would need to make sure it's within this period of time. And we pretend like a perfect stranger is going to read this Schedule D. And we tell them the penalty for reneging on the contract on the leased property in Bradenton resulted in a $1,000 loss. It wasn't a gain, it was a loss. And if we add up that loss, we show it in parentheses down here because it's $1,000 loss. That's what the parentheses illustrate. When we add 1,000, we get 1,000, and it's a negative number too. So instead of using negatives in accounting, they use parentheses to indicate a loss, a negative. So the estate lost $1,000, and the estate had a net loss of $1,000. So we're going to carry that $1,000 figure over in a minute to the summary schedules. But that's it. I mean, it's simply a way of illustrating in this schedule that carrying value of $10,000 is no longer true. We only got $9,000, and this is why. Because of the penalty. And that's all you have to do for Schedule D to illustrate that. Okay. Moving on, we have just one last schedule to do, and then the summary. And so I'll close here, and we will pick up on the next one, which is Schedule E.